Hello everyone, and welcome to a very brief walkthrough of our Quickstart to deploy an Azure Kubernetes Service cluster with Flatcar Container Linux using the Azure CLI. I'm going to fly through this Quickstart here. This is on learn.microsoft.com, and let's get going. So you can read some of the prerequisites here under the Before You Begin section. This is if you're deploying it yourself. You could be using Azure Cloud Shell. I'm going to be using my local Mac OS installation with Z Shell and the Azure CLI itself. One of the first things we need to do is register the resource providers for Flatcar Linux. So what I'm going to do here is copy and paste this section here, and we're going to go into a terminal inside of VS Code. So one of the things I like to use is this terminal in editor area. So if we go angle bracket and I say new terminal in editor area, you can see that we can pop a full screen terminal, and in this case it's running Z Shell. And I have the AZ CLI installed at the moment, so I can just paste this in here and say AZ provider show, and this will query the registration state of the Microsoft.container service provider for us. And it says it's registered, but if it wasn't registered for any reason, you would be able to register that by using AZ provider register. So if we paste this in here, this is an idempotent operation, so that just will go ahead and register. The next thing we have to do is install the AKS preview extension. This is because some of these features that we're using, like Flatcar Linux, rely on this to be able to run Flatcar Linux and other preview functionality. So we're going to install that extension. And we already have 19.0.0 B9 already installed. We can also run the update command if you'd previously had it. So I can paste that in here. And that's now installing for me. And I'll just wait for that install to complete. So with that out of the way, we need to register the AKS Flatcar preview feature flag on the subscription that we have, and that's with the AZ feature register command. So if I click copy and I go back in and I say AZ feature register, and that's the AKS Flatcar preview. We'll wait for that to complete. And then we'll need to verify the registration status of that. I clear that using the AZ feature show. And this just makes sure that that feature has been properly registered. And then finally, once it's been registered, we need to refresh the registration with the provider in order to be able to make sure that that's properly propagated. So with all of that out of the way, we're going to go ahead and we're going to define some environment variables. In this case, we're going to be creating a random ID, creating a resource group, a region where we're going to deploy our cluster, and we're going to give the cluster a name here. And I'm going to paste this here. Except in my case, I'm going to export the region. I'm up here in Toronto, but I'm going to say region Canada Central, because that's one of the regions I'm able to deploy to here. So that's the only thing I'm going to override in my case. And now I'm going to create a resource group. Here. So we're going to use the AZ AKS create command. It's going to deploy to the resource group we've just created with the name that we've generated, and it's going to use the --os--sku flag with the Flatcar parameter here, and that's what's going to define the operating system of the nodes. So I'm going to copy that here, paste it in there. This is a standard AKS cluster with only one node, so this keeps the costs down, especially for test dev. This is we're provisioning the control plane. Now we're creating the agent pools. It's now reconciling the add-ons. And that deployment has succeeded. Now we're going to want to connect to the cluster. So if we run the AKS get credentials command, this will authenticate our local kube control to the cluster itself. So that's added the cluster to my context. And now if I run kube control get nodes, you'll be able to see the nodes in the node pool. Next, we're going to deploy an application. This is a sample application. We're going to create a file called AKS store quickstart.yaml. So I paste that YAML inside of VS Code here. I can save that. And then I'm going to use kube control apply -f to deploy this manifest. It's created all of these resources. Next, we're going to test the application. We'll use kube control get pods. We can see that a couple of those are still needing to become ready. Next, we're going to check for a public IP address on the storefront application using kube control get service. And we'll wait for that to become ready. And next, we'll take that external IP and then we'll open that in a web browser. Open up a new tab, paste the IP address in there. And we can see that our storefront is up and running. I'm going to buy some Contoso Catnip's Friend. Go to the cart, make sure that's running. Proceed to checkout. And it says the order was submitted successfully. Now let's look at the cluster inside of the Azure portal. So if we go to resource groups, which I've opened previously, and then we click refresh, I've been searching for the my AKS resource prefix, and open up my resource group. You can see that I have an AKS cluster right here. And if I click on that cluster, you can see that we have a base SKU using mostly default options here. We have Kubernetes 1.32.9. And then if we have a look at our node pools, which you can find on the left-hand side here under Settings, Node Pools, you can see we have node pool 1. And we can see the node image version is AKS Flatcar Gen 2 2025 10.29.0. Finally, if we want to clean up our resources, we can delete the cluster by using the az group delete command. I'm going to Control-C this watch so that it's no longer visible. Clear the screen. Now we run the az group delete command. It prompts us to confirm the operation. And this will take a moment to clean up the cluster. And now that's deleted, we can go back to the Azure portal, go back to our resource groups, hit refresh and see these resources have been cleaned up. So thank you for walking through our Quickstart deploy an Azure Kubernetes Service cluster with Flatcar Container Linux. If you'd like to get back to this quickly, you can find this at aka.ms/aks-flatcar-deploy. Thank you very much.